stories. Right, well, anyway, I'm going to count to three. No, I want chaos. I want total chaos. Welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. 1, 2, 3.
He got the chaos.
What?
It's John's middle name, Chaos.
Okay, did that all come through?
Chaotically.
Did that come through okay?
Yes.
Chaotically.
Oh, that's what I like, a little chaos. Right, so this is where I am, is the launch of Glenys Newton's Round Suffolk in 40 Stories, our very own Glenys Newton. But right now, we have our very own Cordingley, who she next Sunday, not this Sunday, will be hosting. But right, and leave the chaos behind, or get back to the chaos. Right. See you all later. Bye. Gary, over to you.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Enjoy your evening over there in that library with your 40 stories around. Was it Suffolk or Norfolk?
Suffolk.
Okay, and he's gone. Okay, so here we are. Well, welcome everybody to this evening's storytelling. And my name is Gary, and I'm going to tell you a few stories from my repertoire. Some of you may have heard some of them before, but I don't know. We're going to tell you them anyway. And so it's a delight to be here at the World Storytelling Cafe. It's been a long time, and we'll start with a story that I've been telling probably since the beginning of my storytelling career. And it goes a little bit like this. Crow was sat in a tree looking for her dinner when she spied a big juicy frog in the tall grass. So she flew down out of the tree. She picked up the frog in her beak and she flew up onto the roof of a nearby house. She landed on the house. She put frog onto the roof. She put claw onto frog just to stop her from escaping. And she was just about to eat her all up for her dinner when she heard Crow thought that was funny. Somebody laughing. When she looked around, there was nobody there. So she turned back to Frog and she was just about to eat her up for her dinner when she heard and she looked down. Well, she couldn't believe it. It was Frog who was laughing. Sister Frog, said Crow, why are you laughing? After all, I'm about to eat you all up for my dinner. Oh, don't you worry about me, Ribbit, said Frog. You just do what you must do. No, said Crow, I need to know why you're laughing. Well, I'm laughing, said Frog, because you brought me to the place where my mother lives. My mother is a big frog, and if she thought you were going to eat me or even hurt me, you would be in big trouble, Ribbit. Rah! Crow didn't want that, so she picked up Frog in her beak and she flew along the roof of the house till she came to the chimney. She landed on the chimney and she put Frog onto the chimney and she put Claw onto Frog, just to stop her from escaping. And she was just about to eat Frog up for her dinner once again when she heard she looked down and there was Frog laughing again. Sister Frog, said Crow, why are you laughing now? Oh, I'm laughing now because you brought me from the place where my mother lived, Ribbit, to the very place where my uncle lives. My uncle is twice as big as my mother, and you would be in twice as much trouble. Rah! Crow didn't want that. Whee! She flew off with Frog in her beak. She flew down over the hedges and over the fences and over the walls and over the gardens until she came to a garden where there was a stone well. She landed on the edge of the stone well and she put Frog onto the well and she put Claw onto Frog just to stop her from escaping. And she was just about to eat her all up for her dinner when Frog put up a hand and said, excuse me, Sister Crow, Ribbit, I couldn't help noticing when you carry me in your beak. Your beak is very blunt. And if you want to eat me, you should have a sharp beak. Ah, that's a very good idea, said Crow. So if you would just go to that rock over there in the tall grass and sharpen your beak, Ribbit. Very good idea, said Crow. So she flew across the garden and landed on a rock sticking out of the tall grass, and she began to sharpen her beak. And if you're out there and you want to help the crow sharpen her beak, you can help like this. And at last, her beak was as sharp as the edge of a very, very sharp knife. Yow! Then she flew back over to the well where she had left Frog. And what do you suppose she found? I'll give you a clue. No frog at all. That's what the face is on the screen in front of me are saying. Oh, Crow began to look around the garden. She looked over here. There was no sign of frog there. Oh, she looked over there. There was no sign of frog there. She looked all around the garden and there was no sign of frog anywhere. At last, she looked, down into the well. And there, at the bottom of the well, was Frog swimming around. Sister Frog, said Crow, I was ever so worried when I came back and found you weren't here. I wonder if you wouldn't mind jumping up here so I can eat you up for my dinner. I'm terribly sorry, said Frog, but the walls to this well are very tall and very slippery. Remember, if you want to eat me, you must come down here and get me. With that, Crow flew off and she never saw Frog again, and Frog swam off and she never saw Crow again. And that's the story, The Frog and the Crow. Thank you very much. Just a short story, just to get us going. And I saw somebody saying in the little text down there, and she got a frog in her throat. Possibly at one moment there was a bit of a froggy in the throat thing going on. Anyway, I've got a couple of stories from you now. The next one now is a story from, it comes from, I believe, Ethiopia in Africa. And it's a story, well, I won't tell you what it's about. I'll just tell you the story. But it does start off with a little bit of drumming, and I brought my djembe along with me. And in order to make it work really, really well, it'd be good if you all clapped along like that. You can't hear my drum. Oh, is it because of the...
Switch your settings.
I thought I had set it to... okay, we'll just...
Original sounds?
What should
You
it
need
do?
original sounds.
Original sound. I'll put it on automatic. Try this.
For a moment.
Yeah, okay. High type.
On original sounds, it should come through.
I can't find original sounds. Where is that? Oh.
Up in the left-hand corner by recording, you should see a little triangle, and it'll give you a choice. You don't want to hit the triangle. You want to hit whatever its sound it says. So original sound on original. Are you on a computer or a tablet?
I'm on a MacBook.
Oops. I take it back.
That was a very nice take it back. Well, if it's not working, that's a great, great shame. Original sound there. How's this?
It started. Do it again. Nah,
No.
it's the MacBook.
Let's forget it. There's the djembe. I'll just put that over there. No, it's a vibe. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
But for those of you that can't see, Baba C is having a bit of a moment as I...
He threw the djembe.
No, I would never throw the djembe. Everything is okay. Well, if you can hear me now without the drum, that's a shame, but it's okay. We carry on. So this is a story from Ethiopia, and it's about a sheep and a goat. Now, the thing is, the sheep and the goat, they lived on a farm. And the farmer didn't look after them particularly well. He gave them just about enough water so that they didn't die of thirst. And he gave them just enough food so that they didn't die of starvation. But he didn't look after them. And the compound where they lived, the yard where they lived, it had no protection against the hot rays of the sun. So all day long, they were under the blistering hot sun with hardly any water and hardly any food. And I tell you what, they were miserable, as you probably would be yourself. So one night they decided that they would escape So as the full moon was high in the sky, they squeezed through a tiny gap in the fence and they trotted off down the road. Now, I would have done this on my drum, but it doesn't matter. I could do it on my knees. Down the road they trotted all through the night to get as far away from the farmer and his farm as they possibly could. Well, you know what happened? The full moon began to sink in the sky over here, and the sun began to rise in the sky over here. And as the sun began to rise in the sky over here, all of the other animals began to wake up. Now, the first animal to wake up was a... What do you think that was? I'll do it again. Lewis, what was that? What do you think it was?
A troll or a ogre?
Very close. It was a lion. It was a lion woke up. And when the lion woke up, she opened her eyes and she looked down the dusty road. And what did she see running towards her? I'll tell you, a sheep and a goat. And because she had just woken up, it was a him actually, it made him think of something, made him think of his breakfast. And he said, rubbing his tummy, and you can rub your tummies as well if you want. And he said, here comes breakfast. Well, the goat saw him and the goat said, no, you don't want to do that. The sky's going to fall on your head. And he crouched down low, ready to leap on them and tear them to shreds. And then the goat saw him and said, no, you don't want to do that. The sky's going to fall on your head and the earth's going to open beneath your feet. Run away as fast as you can. Well, the lion was terrified. And so he turned and ran away as fast as he could. The sheep and the goat. Down the road they ran. Well, they hadn't gone very far down the road when they came across a leopard. And the leopard had just woken up. And she opened her eyes and looked down the dusty road. And what did she see running towards her? A sheep and a goat. And what did she say to herself? Well, you know now. She rubbed her belly and she said, here comes breakfast. And she crouched down low, ready to leap on the sheep and the goat and eat them for her breakfast. Well, the sheep saw her and said, no, you don't want to do that. The sky is going to fall on your head and the earth's going to open beneath your feet. Run away as fast as you can. So the leopard, terrified for her life, ran away as fast as she could. And the sheep and the goat, they ran down the road in the way that they did before, but without slapping my knees because you can't hear it. Down the road they trotted and trotted and trotted until at last they came across a hyena. Now the hyena had just woken up and rubbed her eyes and she looked down the dusty road. She saw the sheep and the goat coming towards her. What did she say to herself? Rubbing her belly. Here comes breakfast. Well, the goat, and she crouched down low, ready to leap on them and tear them to shreds and eat them for her breakfast. But the goat saw her and said, no, you don't want to do that. The sky is going to fall on your head and the earth's going to open beneath your feet. Run away as fast as you can. And the hyena ran away as fast as it could, terrified for its life. And the sheep and the goat, tickety-tack, tackety-tackety, tackety-tackety, tackety-tack, down the road they trotted until at last they came to a place where there was a pool of cool, clear water. They began to drink that cool, clear water, and you can help them. And they drank and drank that cool, clear water. It was sweet, crystal, cool, and delicious. And when they finished drinking the cool, clear water, they began to eat the tall, lush green grasses that grew all around the pool. You can help them munch those grasses. And so they spent the day eating the tall, lush green grasses and drinking the cool, crystal clear water. Well, at last, the sun began to set in the sky over here, and the moon began to rise in the sky over here. And as the moon began to rise, the sheep and the goat, they looked at each other and said, this is the first time that they had ever spent on the other side of the fence. And I can tell you, they were terrified. What are we going to do? Said the sheep. I don't know, said the goat. We need to find somewhere to hide. And they looked around And even though they'd been there all day, they hadn't noticed that there was a pool of cool, clear water. Next to the pool of cool, clear water, there was a tree growing. And the goat said, if we climb up into that tree, we'll be safe from all the wild animals. So the sheep and the goat, they climbed up into the tree and they settled down for the night. Now, Babasi has given me a confused look there. Sheep and a goat climbing up into a tree. Well, yeah, I know, but it's a story, isn't it? So, they could have flown off with jetpacks for all I knew. That would have been good. Anyway, who do you think came and sat underneath the tree they were hiding in?
The lion.
That was a really good guess, and it was the right guess. Of course, the lion. And who do you think came and sat down next to the lion? Lewis, who do you think came and sat down next to the lion?
Pardon?
Who do you think came and sat down next to the lion? The lion sat underneath the tree. Who came and sat down next to the lion? This is
Me think about it.
Yeah, this is a test to see how carefully you are listening to the story. I'll give you a clue. It was a leopard. Just a little clue. It was a
Same.
it was a leopard. And I'll tell you who came and sat down next to the leopard.
Oh, I think I know this, I think. A whale.
A whale. Close. Close.
Oh.
That would have made it a well of a story.
Yeah, would have.
Stop it.
It was the hyena. So you had the lion, the leopard, and the hyena sitting underneath the tree that the sheep and the goat were hiding in. Well, the lion turned to the other two and said, I've met two characters and there's two animals this morning on the road, and one was a sheep and the other was a goat. And they told me the sky would fall on my head, and they told me the earth would open under my feet. And I don't mind admitting I was terrified and I ran for my life. Well, the leopard and the hyena admitted that the same thing had happened to them as well. And so they made a pact right there and then. If ever they saw the sheep and the goat again, whether they were hungry or not, they would leap on them and tear them to shreds without mercy. The sheep and the goat sat high up in the tree, overheard that conversation, and they sat as still as they could for as long as they could. They were petrified. But then the sheep turned to the goat and said, I have to go. And the goat said, no, you have to stay. You heard what they said they would do. If they ever saw us again, they'd leap, tear us to shreds without mercy. You have to stay. And the sheep said, you don't understand. I've drunk so much water. I have to go. Where do you think they had to go? She had to go to the toilet, of course. Well, said the goat, cross your legs. I don't know about you. I have never seen a sheep in a tree with crossed legs. Well, that sheep, she tried to cross her legs once. You can't see, but I'm trying to cross my legs. And nothing happened. She tried to cross the legs the second time. I don't believe you, Shane. I tried to cross her legs a second time, and she saw nothing happen. She tried to cross her legs a third time. She fell out of the tree and landed bang. That was bang, right on top of the lion's head. And the lion jumped up and said, the sky is falling on our heads, run for your lives. And the lion went that way, the leopard went that way, and the hyena went that way, and they never came back. So the sheep and the goat spent the rest of their days drinking the cool, clear water and eating the tall, lush green grass. And that is the end of the story. Thank you. I'm just having a little look at my my list of stories down there, because I don't know about other storytellers, right? I could tell stories all night without looking at a written word, except for my list. And if I don't have my list with me, I don't know what stories I know. And it's a nightmare. I'm seeing some knowing faces in the audience and some hands going up. Yep, that's me. Yes, Babasi, you may borrow that story. Of course you can. Yes, of course you can. I mean, I borrowed it. So, you know, stories, they go around and you hear them and you tell them on. Otherwise, what happens to them? They disappear. So, of course you can. Right, my next story brings us a bit closer to home, and it's no, it doesn't. No, I lie. I'm looking out of my window and I'm watching the leaves turning into their autumn colours, putting on their autumn coat. The trees are putting on their autumn coat. And then the wind is going to come along and help take the leaves off of the tree, so they blow their coat away. And Shane, you'll know this story. It's a story about a boy, and he lives in Russia, where it's very, very cold. And he lives on a farm, just him and his grandmother, just the two of them. They live on this farm, and they haven't got very much in the world, and they haven't got much food. And you know, it's well into the winter, and the old woman sends the boy out to the barn to get some oats, because she wants to make some maybe oat cakes or some porridge or something like that. And the boy, he crosses over the farmyard into the barn, and he takes a bowl with him, and he reaches down into the barrel in that barn, and he takes a handful of oats and he puts them in his bowl, and then he sets off again back across the farmyard, back to his farmhouse. Well, he's halfway across the farmyard when who do you think comes swoosh, 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 swooshing down through the trees, down the hill between the farmhouse and the barn, and off across the fields. I'll tell you, it was none other than the North Wind himself. And as he went by, he picked up all of the oats that the boy had in his bowl, and he took them away with him. Well, what was there to do? Nothing but to go back into the barn and get another handful of oats. So the boy, he went back into the barn, and he reached down into that barrel, and he took out another handful of oats, and he put them into his bowl. Then he came back and he set off across the farmyard back to his farmhouse. Well, he was halfway across the farmyard when who do you think comes swoosh, 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 swooshing back across the fields between the farmhouse and the barn, and up through the trees and off into the sky. Well, of course, it was the North Wind on his way back. And as he went by, he picked up all of the oats that the boy had in his bowl, and he took them away with him. So what was there to do but to go back into the barn and get another handful of oats? So the boy went back into the barn. Only this time, there was only one handful of oats left. So after this, there would be no more oats. And that boy and his poor grandmother would go hungry. So he reached into the barrel and he took the last handful of oats and he put them in his bowl. And then, stop it, Babasy. It's punning again. And he went to the door of the, he can't help himself. He's going, for those who can't, he can't help himself. What can I do? What can you do? Keep them to yourselves. No, I'm joking. Anyway, there's a lot of messages going on down here. It's taking my mind off the story. So he goes to the barn door, and he stands at the barn door, and he looks up into the trees, and there's no sign of the North Wind up there. So he looks down across the fields, and there's no sign of the North Wind down there either. So quickly he rushes across the farmyard, but halfway across the farmyard, who do you think comes rushing, swoosh, swoosh, swooshing along the roof of the barn, lifting the tiles as he goes down the side of the barn, across the farmyard, up the side of the farmhouse wall, and off to the four corners? Of course, it was the North Wind. And as he went by, he took all of the oats with him, and he was gone. Well, the boy, what did he now? He had an empty bowl and an empty barrel. What was he going to do? Him and his poor grandmother were going to starve. Well, there was nothing else to be done but to go and see the North Wind at his house at the edge of the world and get his oats back again. So off he set. And if it was a long journey or a short journey, I couldn't tell you. But at last he came to the big house at the edge of the world, and he knocked. Is that? Could you hear that? I would have done it louder, but I didn't want it to go off. So he knocked, boom, 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 on the door. The door opened, and there, standing with his belt pulled tight around his waist and his hair billowing and filling the sky, was the North Wind himself. "Hello," said the North Wind. "How nice to see you at my door." And the boy said, "Well, it might be nice to see me at your door, but when you were at my door the other day, you took all of my oats. And if you don't give them back again, me and my poor grandmother will starve to death." "Oh, I'm sorry," said the North Wind, running his fingers through his beard, "but I don't have your oats anymore." "Well, what are you going to do?" said the boy. we're going to starve. So the north wind ran his fingers through his beard a bit more, and if you happen to have a really, really big beard, you can run your fingers through your beard as well. Well, there's quite a few people in the audience with beards, and they're all doing that for us. I have the very thing, he said. And he went off to his kitchen. He went to the kitchen table and he opened the drawer and he took out a tablecloth and he brought it and he gave it to the boy. Take this tablecloth, said the north wind. It's magic. And all you have to do is say these words, lay, cloth, lay, and it will lay you a magnificent feast. Well, the boy said, thank you very much. And he took the tablecloth and he put it under his arm and he set off back to his grandmother's. Well, if it was a long way coming, it was a long way going back again. And halfway home, he came to an inn and he booked himself a room. Well, the innkeeper showed him his room and then showed him the dining room, and he sat down at a table, and there in the corner was a fire burning, and sat around the fire was a storyteller, funny enough, telling some stories. And in the other corner of the room, some musicians playing some music, and the rest of the room was filled with people eating delicious food and drinking delicious drink. And the innkeeper came to the boy and said, what would you like for your evening meal? And the boy said, oh, don't you worry about this. Just watch this. And he took out the tablecloth and he rolled it out on the table and he said the magic words, which were, lay, cloth, lay. Yeah, lay, cloth, lay. Fantastic. And there on the table, lay, cloth, lay, was the most magnificent feast you could imagine. There was a great bowl of borscht soup, which is made out of beetroot, and there was lumps of bread, and there was boiled potatoes. And at this point, when I'm telling the story live to an audience, I usually ask them to make suggestions. So if anybody has a suggestion from the audience that was something that might go on that table, you can say it now.
Roast chicken.
Roast chicken. There was roast chicken. There was
parsnips, lasagna,
there was cabbage, there was a huge leg of pork. I'm vegetarian, none of it would appeal to me, and Mike's already finished his. All kinds of delicious foods. If you could imagine it, it was there on the table. Well, the boy took what he needed, and then he said to everybody else who was sat in the room like that, eyes wide open, jaw on the floor, he said, help yourselves. And they did. And very quickly, there was nothing left, only crumbs. So the boy shook the tablecloth, rolled it up, put his under his arm, said goodnight to everybody, and went off to his bed. Well, in the middle of the night, the innkeeper, whose name was Ivanovich, he was tapping the embers of the fire with his metal poker, saying to himself, I should have a tablecloth just like the one the boy has. So he went to his own kitchen drawer and he took out a tablecloth that looked just like the one the boy had. And then he crept up the stairs, making sure he didn't step on the 5th step, because that was the one that went and woke up the whole household. And he crept into the room where the boy was sleeping, and he took the boy's tablecloth and replaced it with his own. He crept out and he was gone. Well, in the morning, the boy woke up, had his breakfast, said thank you very much, and made his way back to his grandmother's. When he got back to his grandmother's, he said to her, told her all about the north wind. He told her all about the tablecloths. And his grandmother, in an uncharacteristically non-Russian accent, said, so, hearing is one thing, seeing is another. Show me. And so the boy rolled out the tablecloth and he said the magic words, which were, lay, cloth, lay. Everybody's saying it. Very, very good. Lay, cloth, lay. And there on the table appeared absolutely nothing. Zilch, zero, nada, nothing. I've been tricked by the north wind, said the boy. I'll have to go back and see him again. Well, to cut a long story short, he went back to the house at the edge of the world and he knocked on the door. Bang, bang, bang. The door opened, and there, with his hair billowing and filling the sky and his belt pulled tight around his waist, was the north wind himself. Hello, he said. How nice to see you back at my door again. Well, it might be nice to see me, said the boy, but that tablecloth you gave me, it only worked once. What are you going to do? Me and my poor grandmother are going to starve to death. Oh, it should have worked more than once, said the north wind, rubbing his fingers through his beard. I have the very thing, he said. And he went off to his barn and he came back with a goat. He said, "This is no ordinary goat. No, this is a magic goat. And if you say these magic words, lay, goat, lay, the goat will lay you a great pile of gold." And the boy said, "That's fabulous. Thank you very much." And he took the string around the goat's neck and he set off to his grandmother's. Well, halfway home, he came to the inn and he booked himself a room. And he sat down at the table and there was some musicians playing some music, some storytellers telling stories. And there was people sat around eating their meals. And the innkeeper brought him his meal. And then he was just about to go to bed. He thought, "I'll just try that trick with the goat." So he turned to the goat and he said the magic words, "Lay, goat, lay. Well done." And before the eyes of a mesmerized and astonished room full of people, the goat lay a great pile of gold that sparkled in the firelight. And everybody was like that. And the boy said, "Well, help yourselves." And in no time at all of the gold was gone, even quicker than the food. And the boy took the goat, said goodnight to everybody, and he went off to bed. Well, of course, in the middle of the night when everybody else was asleep, the innkeeper, whose name was Ivanovich. Well done, those of you that remembered. Nobody remembered. And was tapping the embers of the fire with his poker and saying to himself, "I should have a goat just like the one the boy has." So he went off to his own barn, got a goat that looked a bit like the one that the boy had, and he crept upstairs, making sure he didn't step on the 5th step, because that was the one that went "Arr," and woke up the whole household. And he crept into the room where the boy was sleeping and he took the goat that the boy had and he left his own goat. It was gone. And in the morning, the boy got up, had his breakfast, said thank you very much, went back to his grandmother's, told her all about the north wind, told her all about the goat. And the old woman said, "Well, hearing is one thing, seeing is another. Show me." So he turned to the goat and he said the magic words, which were, "Lay, goat, lay." Well, whatever it was the goat lay, it certainly wasn't gold. And the boy said to himself, "I have been tricked once again. And now it's time to go back to the north wind and see him again." So off he went on that journey. And when he got there, he knocked on the door. Bang, bang, bang. The door opened. And there, with his hair billowing and filling the sky and his belt pulled tight around his waist, there was the north wind himself. "Ooh, you're back again," he said. "What are you doing here now?" And the boy said, "Well, that tablecloth you gave me only worked the once. That goat you gave me only worked the once. Me and my poor grandmother, we're going to starve to death. What are you going to do about it?" "Ooh," said the north wind, "they should have worked more than once." And I just want to interrupt this. No, I won't. I'll carry on. "They should have worked more than once. Ooh, I don't know what I'm going to do." And he ran his fingers through his beard. And he said, "I have the very, very thing." And he went off to his shed and he found a stick. And he brought it and he gave it to the boy. He's saying, "This is no ordinary stick. Oh, no. This stick is magic. And if anybody gives you any kind of trouble whatsoever, say these magic words, set about stick. And the stick will set about whoever is giving you trouble until you say these magic words, stop, stick, stop. And then it will come back to your hand. It will only answer to your voice, mind," said the wind. And the boy said, "Thank you very much." And he took the stick and he set off back to his grandmother's. Well, of course, halfway home, he came to the inn and he booked himself a room and he had some food, and the musicians were playing the balalaicas and the storytellers were telling the stories and people were eating their food and drinking their drink. And the innkeeper was looking and thinking, there must be something special about that stick. There's got to be something special about that stick. And the boy at the end of the evening said goodnight and went to bed. And in the middle of the night, when everybody else was asleep, the innkeeper, whose name was, no, not John, Ivanovich. Somebody said Ivanovich. Ivanovich. He said to himself as he poked the embers of the fire with his poker, "I should have a stick just like the one the boy has." So he went to his own shed and he found a stick that looked just like the one the boy had. And then he crept up the stairs, making sure he didn't step on the 5th step, because that was the one that went "Arr," and woke up the whole household. And he crept into the room where the boy was sleeping. But you see, the boy wasn't sleeping, because by now he'd made a connection between the disappearing magic gifts And the innkeeper, so as the innkeeper reached out to take the stick, the boy said the magic words, which were, "Set about stick," and the stick flew up into the air, and then like the blades of a helicopter, it whizzed around the room 3 times, and the innkeeper watched it go, and then it flew across the room and it hit him on the head, and then it flew around the back and bang, hit him on his shoulder, and then hit him on his other shoulder, hit him on his leg, hit him in his belly, oof, and then hit him on his bottom, pow, and then on his legs, around and around it flew, hitting him wherever it could, and until at last he said, "Make it stop, make it stop. If you make it stop, I'll give you back your magic gifts, I promise." Ow, 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 ow. Well, the boy waited a little bit longer just to make sure that he really meant what he said. And then he said the second magic words, which were, "Stop, stick, stop." And the stick flew through the air and landed in his hand. And the innkeeper went off to the barn and the kitchen, and he came back with the magic cloth and with the magic goat, and then rubbing his bruises and his battered self, he left the room and went off to bed. Well, in the morning, the boy got up and he said, had his breakfast and said, "Thank you very much." And he went back to his grandmother's. And when he got there, he said, "Sit there, say now, watch this." And he spread the cloth out on the table and he said the magic words, which were, "Lay, cloth, lay." And there before the old woman's eyes was the most magnificent feast you could ever imagine. And the old woman, she ate her fill 3 times over. And then he turned to the goat and he said his magic words, which were, "Lay, goat, lay." And the goat laid a massive pile of gold that sparkled in the morning light as it came through the window. And the old woman, her jaw almost hit the floor, her eyes opened so wide they nearly popped out of her head, and she was amazed. And the 2 of them, well, you know, they never went without again. They never went hungry. They never needed to anything because they had everything they needed just there. And you know what? I was there last Wednesday, and they told me that if I ever met a bunch of lovely people like your good selves, I was to say to you that you could come and visit them. They've told me to tell you you can come and visit them at their farm in North Russia anytime you like, and you can stay for as long as you like. And when you're there, you can eat as much food as they give you. And when you leave, you can take as much gold as they give you and you can fill your pockets with. But don't try and take either without asking, because if you do, just remember the stick that sat in the corner. That's the tale. I don't know what the time is, and I'm not sure. Okay, I think we've got time for one more story, but I've just got to go over there and press the button on the electric to make the charger work so that we still have power, because I've got 6%. It's a good job to check the time. I'm down to 6%, about to run out. So I'm just going to go and do that. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be here.
Okay. You hardly noticed I was gone. You didn't even have a chance to go and make a cup of tea, nor nothing. So my last story that I'm going to tell you now is a story that, thank you very much, Shane. Thank you. Some compliments pouring in through the little thing down there, the little message thing. So, and I know that Shane tells this story as well. So it's good to have met somebody else that had heard of the story. Where was I? The story. So this story is a bit closer to home, and it was told to me by a very old friend of mine and a friend of many other people's as well. A great, great storyteller, known throughout possibly the world, but certainly across England. And his name is Taffy Thomas. And Taffy told me this story many, many years ago, and said it would be okay for me to pass it on to other people as long as I remember to say where it came from. So, so there you are. That's just remembering Taffy, and who's still with us, so that's good. Not remembering in that kind of way. And so where were we? The story he told me, and it goes a little bit like this. You know, Jack. You remember Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack the Lad, Jack and the Giant Killer, and it might even be the same Jack. I don't know, but this Jack lived at the sea's edge with his wife in a rickety old shack that was so old and rickety that if a strong wind had blown in the night, it would have knocked it over. That's how old and rickety it was. And they were very, very poor. Well, Jack always is. And Jack was a fisherman. And this is the kind of fisherman that Jack was, I don't know. He is the kind of fisherman that would wake up in the morning, pull back the curtains, look out the window and say, it's a very hot day with the sun shining in the sky up there. Too hot to go fishing. I think I'll just go back to sleep. And he'd roll over and go back to sleep. On another day, he might pull back the curtains and look out and go, not enough sun in the sky to go fishing today. I think I better just go roll over and go back to sleep. Too many clouds. And so the day came when his wife said to him, Jack, you're a lazy lump. That's what you are, a lazy lump. So get up out of bed and go down to the sea, get in a boat and go out and do some fishing, and don't come back again until you've caught enough fish to turn into a bag of gold. So Jack, well, okay, he got up, he put on his hat, he put on his coat, he went down to the beach and climbed into his boat, and he sailed halfway out to sea. And when he got halfway out to sea, he picked up his net, and you can pick up your net with me. And after 3, cast it out. Ready? 1, 2, 3, swoosh. And he cast it out. Well, he pulled that net back in again. And when he pulled it in, there was but one fish in it. And when he poured it out onto the deck, the fish flapping around on the deck it was, slowly, not as fast as that actually. And you know, if you were, I got my graphics a bit wrong there. If you were a fisherman, the kindest thing you could do to a fish when you catch it is to hit it on the head with something heavy and put it out of its misery. So Jack had a hammer and he reached around to get that hammer. It's a bit gruesome, this, and he picked up the hammer, went to hit the fish on the head, and the fish called out and said, "No, Jack, you don't want to do that. Today's your lucky day. You caught me, a magic talking fish. And if you spare me my life, I'll grant you a..." Great. I can see everybody's on the ball there. If you spare me my life, I'll grant you a wish. Well, that's very easy, said Jack. I wish I had a bag of gold. Well, that's easy also, said the fish. Pick me up and put me back into the sea. So Jack, he picked up the fish and he put it back into the sea and he watched it as it swam off with scales glistening in the morning sun. And then he went, "What a fool I am. I put the fish back in the sea and it swam off. Oh," and his heart sank and he sat back down on his little bench. Oh, there was something there. When he turned around, there was a little leather bag sat on the bench. So he picked it up. It was quite heavy. And he opened it up and he looked inside and what do you think was in there? Yes, Babasy, gold. Oh, yes, Mike, gold. He's holding up gold now for me. He's got a bag of gold. Mike, you should come and see us sometime. Dinner's on you. And so he sailed back to the beach, and then he walked along the beach to his rickety shack, and there was his wife. She stood at the door with her hands on her hips, and she said, "You haven't been out there long enough to catch enough fish to... What are you doing back already?" And he said, "Don't you worry about that. Come inside, let me show you." So they went inside, and he put down the bag on the table, and he opened it up, and she said, "Look at that." And she looked inside, and she went, "Oh, Jack, you've done well. You've done very well." And she was happy for about an hour. Now, the thing is, she wasn't a greedy woman. Don't get me wrong. She wasn't greedy. And she wasn't a bad woman either. So don't get me wrong. She was a good woman, was Jack's wife. But she did think about what he'd been saying. And she did think that he could have done better. So she said to him, "Jack, you caught a magic talking fish. And of all the things in the whole wide world that you could have wished for, you only wished for a bag of gold. When you could have wished for a nice big townhouse with servants coming and going, and for me to have a lovely posh frock, and for you to have a fine suit." And Jack said, "Well, I never thought about that." And his wife said, "Well, you better go down to the beach tomorrow morning and go out, catch that fish and make that wish." So the next morning, Jackie woke up, he put on his hat, put on his coat, and he went down to the beach and climbed into his boat and he sailed out to sea. When he got halfway out to sea, he picked up his net, and you can pick up your net with me. You ready? And after 3, 1, 2, 3, swoosh, he threw that net out to sea. And he pulled it back in again. You can pull it back in again. And he emptied it out onto the deck of the boat. And there was that fish, the same fish, flapping around, not quite so frantically. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Shane. And so, of course, he reached around to pick up the hammer. But as he reached out to hit the fish on the head fish called out and said, "No, Jack, you don't want to do that. Today's your lucky day. Today you caught me, a magic talking fish. If you spare my life, I'll grant you a wish," of course. And So Jack said, well, I wish that me and my wife had a lovely townhouse with servants coming and going, and she had a lovely frock and I had a fine suit. And, oh, that is net wealth. Is net wealth. Is that what you're saying? Ah, Babaseed can't help himself, can he? I thought he looked troubled. He'd been sat there looking troubled because he was trying to find a pun. Anyway, where were we? Oh, so I don't even know where we were.
Big fish about to hit it with the hammer, and the fish said,
"Don't do that. If you catch me, if you spare my life, I'll grant you a wish. Thank you. At least you were listening." And so Jack said, well, I wish me and my wife had a lovely palace, a lovely townhouse with servants coming and going. Oh, that's where I was up. And she had a nice frock and I had a lovely suit. And the fish said, well, just put me back in the sea. So he picked up the fish, put it in the sea, and away it swam. And he sailed back to the shore and he walked along the beach and to his old shack, but the shack was gone and there was a lovely townhouse. There were servants coming and going. His wife was wearing the loveliest of frocks. When he reached up to take off his fisherman's hat, oh, it was a lovely top hat. And his wife, she said, Jack, you've done well. You've done very well. And she was happy for an hour. Now, I don't want you to think that this is a story that's painting women in a bad way, but because she wasn't bad at all, and neither was she greedy, but she was clever, you see, and she thought to herself about everything that Jack had just said. And she said to Jack, you caught a magic talking fish who gave you a wish, and all you wished for was this townhouse, when what you could have wished for was a grand palace with guards on the towers and guards at the gate for me to be queen and you to be king. And Jack said, well, I never thought about that. And she said, well, you go down to the sea tomorrow and you catch that fish and make that wish. So, oh, I'm going to have to leave the room. The puns are coming in. Shane just told me that this story sounds a bit fishy. Well, it is a fishy tale. So there you go. And so you go down. So you go down to the sea and you catch that. You're making it hard for me today. Oh, stop it. I'm sorry, my good listeners out there around the world who are wondering what is going on. Okay, why is this storyteller melting down before our very eyes? Because people who are in the audience immediately are typing up some pretty terrible puns, and I can't ignore them because they pop up in the middle of my screen. I'm trying to tell the story, and I mean, you know, yes, we have got no minus in cat. Oh my God! So he got up next morning. I'm going to ignore you now. He put on his hat, he put on his coat, he went down to the sea, he climbed into his boat and he sailed out to sea. And he got halfway out to sea and he picked up his net. You can pick up your net with me. And after 3, 1, 2, 3, shush, he threw it out. And when he pulled it back in again and put it onto the deck, of course, there was the fish flapping around. So he reached around to get the hammer and hit the fish on the head. But as he did so, the fish called out and said, no, Jack, you don't want to do that. Today's your lucky day. Today you caught me, the talking fish. And if you spare my life, I'll grant you a wish. And Jack said, well, I wish that me and my wife had a lovely grand palace with guards on the towers and guards at the gate. And she was queen and I was king. And the fish said, well, put me back in the sea. So he picked up the fish and put it back in the sea and wow, away it swam. And he sailed back to the beach and he walked along the beach towards his old ramshackle shack, and it was gone. The townhouse even was gone. In its place was a beautiful, beautiful palace with 2 great towers with guards standing on the towers and guards standing at the gates. And there was his wife with a crown on her head and the robes of a queen. And he reached up to take off his fisherman's hat and ooh, his head felt really heavy. And when he lifted his hat off, it turned into a golden crown encrusted with all kinds of jewels and gems, sparkling in the morning sun. And his wife looked at him and she said, Jack, you've done well. You've done very well. And she was happy for an hour. I have to emphasize, she wasn't a bad person, nor was she greedy, and nor was she typical of women in this world at all. She was just, well, in one way, because she was clever. So maybe she was typical of women in this world. But she did say to Jack, now listen, Jack, caught a magic talking fish who gave you a wish, and of all the whole things in the whole wide world that you could have wished for, you only asked for a palace with guards on the gates and the towers, and for us to be king and queen, when really you could have wished for command of the fishes of the sea, the animals of the land, and the birds of the sky, and the starry heavens themselves, and for you and me to be God. Well, Jack said, I never thought about that one. And so his wife said, well, go down to the sea tomorrow, catch that fish, and you make that wish. So next morning, Jackie got up and he put on his hat, put on his coat, went down to the sea, climbed into his boat, and he sailed halfway out to sea, and he got halfway out to sea, and he picked up his net. You can pick up your net with me. After 3, 1, 2, 3, swoosh, he threw it out, and he pulled it back in again. When he pulled it back in again, there was the fish. He tipped it out onto the deck, and it was flapping around on the boat. And he reached round and he picked up his hammer. He was about to hit the fish on the head with the hammer. And the fish called out and said, no, Jack, you don't want to do that. Today's your lucky day. You caught me, the magic talking fish. And if you spare my life, I'll grant you a wish. And Jack said, well, I wish that I had command of the fish of the sea and the birds, the animals of the land, and the birds of the sky, the starry heavens themselves, and for me and my wife to be God. And the fish said, well, that's easy. Just put me back in the sea. So Jackie picked up the fish and he put it back in the sea, and away it swam. And then he sailed back to the beach and he walked along the beach towards his beautiful, beautiful palace. And oh, the palace was no longer there, and in its place was an old ramshackle shack, falling apart at the edges. If a strong wind had blown in the night, it would have knocked that old shack over. And standing at the door with her hands on her hips, in the rags that she'd been wearing some 3 or 4 days before, and looking not very happy, was Jack's wife. Jack, she said, what have you done? And Jack said, wife, I think we had one wish too many. One too many. If only we'd been happy with the things we'd been given, we'd have had them still. And so they went back to their old way of being. And Jack, he would wake up in the mornings, he'd pull back the curtains, and if the sun was shining in the sky, I can't go fishing today, too sunny. And he'd roll over and go back to sleep. And if he woke up on another morning and pulled back the curtains, looked out, and there were some clouds, I can't go fishing today, too many clouds in the sky. Better go back and roll over and go back to sleep. And that's what he did. And you know what? If they live to this day, that's how they live their life to this day. Thank you very much. And that brings us pretty much to the end of the stories that I set out for this evening, unless you wanted to hear any tiny one about wishes.
If you know a short one.
Yeah, I do.
And maybe the rest of us will behave and not type any more puns.
I mean, it's very funny, but I was like being not very professional in my storytelling.
Well, Louie is on the way to swim, but he joins us every day. Yeah, so he's on the way to swim. He'll keep. Go ahead, Louie.
And now I'm here in Oakham, and it's a swimming pool.
See?
Okay.
So he'll keep.
Actually, this is sad news I can tell you, Bubsy.
Say again.
I'll tell you sad news. It's not that funny. The sad news is today is my last swimming lesson. Only for 2 weeks. Because it's a half term.
Have a good swim.
I will.
Yeah.
We always enjoy you, Louie. You make this work. You bring us together.
I don't know. Have we got time for a 5-minute story, or should we stop it?
Sure. If you 5 minutes. If the gentleman with the gray beards don't distract you with puns, you have time.
This is another wish story, because I told you a story about wishes. I'll make it very, very quick. An old man and an old woman, they lived at the edge of the forest. They were very, very poor. And the old woman had to go out and collect sticks to fuel the fire. And what sticks they had left over, she'd take off to market and sell. And they had nothing. And the old man sent her out one morning to go and get some sticks for their fire so that she could cook him some kind of breakfast. And off she went into the woods. Well, she was there in the woods looking for sticks, and she saw something glistening in a bush nearby. It was early in the morning, you know, with the dewdrops on the spiders' webs and stuff like that. It was like that. But this one was flashing. And she thought, well, that's a bit strange. So she went across and she looked into the bush, and there, in a big spider's web, was a fairy. Her wings trapped in the spider's web and her arms trapped, and she was pulling and trying to escape. Obviously been trying for a long time, but she couldn't get away. And just over here under the leaf like that, there's a spider waiting for her to get tired, and she come and eat her for her breakfast. Well, the old woman didn't want that, so she reached into the web and she pulled the fairy out. And the fairy dusted down her wings and dusted down her legs and her arms, and she said, "You are a very kind old woman. I'm going to give you 3 wishes." And the old woman couldn't believe it. So she dropped a bundle of sticks and she ran as fast as she could back to her hut. And there was her husband. "Wife," he said, "have you brought me some breakfast and some sticks to light the fire?" "Oh, don't you worry about that," said the old woman. Look, and she told him all about the fairy and the spider's web and the 3 wishes. "What are we going to wish for?" She said. "What are we going to wish for?" And the old man, he sat there and his tummy was rumbling, and he was going, I don't know. I wish we had the world's biggest sausage." There on the table in front of them was the world's biggest sausage. Well, his wife looked at him and she said, husband, you were given 3 wishes, and the first wish you wasted on the world's biggest sausage. What were you thinking of?" "I wish that thing was stuck to the end of your nose." And there it was, stuck to the end of the old man's nose. Ooh. He couldn't pull it off. It didn't matter what he did. He pulled and he twisted. The old woman, she got up and she put her foot on his shoulder and she put her arms around that sausage. She pulled and she twisted, she pushed, and it was going nowhere. "What are we going to do?" said the old man. "I can't go around the rest of my life with the world's biggest sausage on the end of my nose." The old woman, she went to the kitchen drawer and she pulled out a big, big, sharp knife. "Don't you come anywhere near me with that," said the old man. He said, "I wish I'd never even thought of sausage." The sausage came off. Luckily, it landed on the table. There, on the table in front of them. Well, this is making a slightly longer story quite short. I've told it as quick as I can. The old woman and the old man, they had 3 wishes, and they chose to use those wishes on a big sausage to be stuck on the end of somebody's nose and then to come off it again. Well, that's it. They had nothing, except they did have delicious sausage for their dinner for 3 or 4 nights on the trot. That's the tale.
That was excellent. Excellent. Let's have another round of applause for Gary Cordingley. Yay!
Good stuff.
And true to form, none of the members of the Greybeards made any puns in the comment section.
That's not true to form.
And that was hard. Which is why I don't read the comment sections when I'm telling stories.
Yeah. I think it depends where they appear, I think.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. Shane, I didn't know you could be that bad. That was good. I expected out of Mike, but Shane, he's the youngin' in the group.
I get on a roll sometimes.
You led him astray. It's your fault, Bubba. See, it's all your fault.
I'm only following your lead, Mike.
Nonsense.
No, hey, and have you noticed that Mike has a prop for every story told?
Yeah.
He has too much free time on his hands.
Yeah.
Gary, I love the story about with the stick, the goat, and the tablecloth. Yeah. There's an Anansi tale and an African American tale similar to that. So I may take your version, if you don't mind, and mix it with the other versions I know. That was excellent, excellent, excellent. Before I forget, this Sunday at 6 p.m. British time, the Worldwide Story Roundup. It's basically open mic for storytellers, young and old, or I should say young and young at heart. So we hope to see you then. Then Tuesday, perhaps the most fantastic event of them all, the Young Tellers at 5 p.m. British time. At 5 p.m., 18 years or younger. There may be an exception for, I think is it the Palestinian
Mexico,
storytellers?
Was it Mexico or Argentina? There was a teacher with...
Yeah, Mexico and Argentina. Thank you, Mike. But tune in. It's going to be great, and Mike and I will do our best to behave. Oh, well, we've lost that already. And then, Friday a week from today will be Shelley Burma, who's from India but currently lives in Switzerland, and she'll be telling tales for children. Actually, it's a family hour. So we invite everybody to support and continue. And on the next, I don't know when the next cash bar is.
I think the next one is the Sunday after that. That
All
Friday.
right.
I think it's on the Sunday following that. Rock the Casbah.
Rock the Casbah. So I'm inviting folk. You don't have to wait for Rock the Casbah. You can just come to storytellingcafe.com, hit a button, and you'll see the button for contributing. Feel free, big or small. Every contribution helps, and it will help the festival when it takes place in February 2022. Did I leave anything else out, Mike, besides puns?
You did a great job. I'm amazed.
Very good.
I'm amazed too. Shane. I'm amazed at Shane. His puns were as bad as ours, Mike.
Oh no, they were better than that.
That's what I said. They were as bad as ours. One more round of applause for Gary Cordingley.
Whoa!
Thank you very much.
I was enthralled. I really enjoyed your stories. So say we all.
Yeah,
I guess it's about time.
Indeed.
Oh, wait. We have to thank Ali. Yeah. Ali, thank you for, again, working the magic carpet. And we enjoyed the ride. So thank you. Looking forward to seeing you in Marrakesh in 2022. Any other business we need to take care of? All right. Well, then, to quote a famous American comedian, I'm so glad we have this time together, but now it's time to say so long. That's from Carol Burnett. We've had a great time. Everybody enjoy your evening, in my case, my afternoon, and we'll see you Sunday, same bat channel, same bat time. I think that just dated me. Anyhow, we'll see everybody. For now, until the next time, to be continued.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Cheers. Thanks,
Take care.
Gary.
See you, Ali.
That was great.
Really good.
Mike,
job.
you're terrible. Shane, you're wonderful.
Shane's gone. You're talking to the air.
I mean, I meant to say Gary, you're wonderful. I was really enthralled.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
I think you're still live,
All
so
right.
I'm going to say goodbye. Goodbye, Ali.
All
Thank
right.
you. See you. Bye-bye. See you. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. See you next time. Next time, Ali. Let John know I held down the fort well, I think. And see out.